This is the No Fear podcast. We know what scares you. I'm Matt.
And I'm Lisa. And this is the No Fear Cast, the podcast where we dissect horror and all the things that scare us. Welcome to Season 10.
Well, like Lisa just said in our intro, we are back from our summer hiatus. We are coming in hot on our 10th season, which we were talking before we started recording that we cannot believe that it's been 10 years of doing this podcast. It really doesn't feel like it's been a full solid decade, but yeah, it's kind of crazy to me that 10 years later we're still here doing this and still have stuff to talk about. And yeah, so season 10. So for this episode, we you may notice that we are absent Mel. She has not left, but she's not able to make our recording for this episode, but she will be back for the next one. So it will be the three of us as usual. But we were thinking, since Mel wasn't able to make it, and since we have such a milestone of a season that we're starting, that we would hold off on starting the series that we were planning until our next episode. And this one we're going to use as kind of a look back, a reflection on some of the things from the past 10 years that we've enjoyed, what we've liked, and also maybe do some recommendations like we sometimes do periodically, just give some recommendations of things that we've been reading and watching and listening to for all of you, so we can kind of have a recommendation and retrospective here on 10 seasons of No Fear Cast. So I'm sure Lisa has a lot that she wants to say as well, but I guess I'll kind of kick things off as far as the retrospective part. I was looking back through a lot of the episodes that we've done and looking at the series in particular, and just kind of going, wow, I can't believe we've done so many of these different series. And I mean, personally, you all know I've made it no secret that zombies are one of my favorite things in horror. So I very much enjoyed when we got to do a series on zombies. But to be quite honest, I think one of my absolute favorite things we've done had been having some of the guests that we've had on. In particular, Paul Tremblay. I still just kind of go, oh my gosh, inside when I remember, like, we've interviewed Paul Tremblay and Grady Hendrix and recently Cynthia Pelayo, and like all of these big modern names in horror. I mean, we're still missing the Stephen King interview. Maybe we can get him for season 10 to come join us. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of just like, I did not think when we started this out that we would be able to, meet with and connect with a lot of these writers. And I don't know, for me, it's just they're out there doing amazing things, and I did not think that they would be nearly as accessible as they have been. And that's just been just an absolute blessing in my book for what we've been doing. Um, I'm sure we've got more to discuss there, but Lisa, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you too to kind of join in. I don't want to do all the talking here.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy because this milestone snuck up on me a little bit. um, I didn't even realize it because we took the summer off just because all three of us had a lot going on, and so we were just like, well, we'll take the summer off and do a hiatus and come back in October because, that seems like a good spooky time to come back with the podcast. And, as we were planning it out, I was like, it is season 10 that we are starting, which does feel crazy. I still remember us planning this podcast, like the three of us on a a text chain, um, talking about like what would we name this and what would we do and what would we talk about. And it does seem, as you were talking about, like for instance, the guests that we've had on, and we've had the, I think, the modern masters of horror, at least in literature, on this podcast. And to think that we went from like just a text chain thinking about what this could be to doing that is pretty incredible. um I've enjoyed every single one of our guests, but I will always maintain that, Grady Hendrix is probably one of my favorite people to interview. He never disappoints. He has some great stories, and we've had him on now a few times, and so um, I'm sure we'll be able to lure him back for season 10 at some point, to talk about more horror. But yeah, I can't believe it. And you're right. Maybe we can, I don't know, maybe we can misery Stephen King a little bit. Maybe that's like the update of Misery is, trapped in a room with podcasters until you agree to do their podcast. I don't know.
Quite possibly. um, I was thinking about it too. I think probably one of my all-time best memories of the podcast was the year that all three of us went to StokerCon together. I think that was about 3 years ago now. I think it was 2022. I mean, it was in Colorado. The weather was beautiful. It was good to see both you and Mel in person for the first time in quite some time, and lots of great panels. Got to rub elbows with some really cool people, and I mean, and it was good to catch up with some of our friends slash authors as well, like Andy Davidson, great friend of the pod, who's been on several times, phenomenal author. Can't speak highly enough of his work. Uh, that's probably one of my big things, and to be completely transparent, we did use some of the proceeds from our Patreon to help pay for those plane tickets and hotel rooms and stuff. So that was actually, some of it was supported by you, the listeners. So, can't say thank you enough for that period. But regardless, I think that was just a phenomenal time.
I completely agree. Denver was that was a trip to remember. And even before StokerCon started, I got to cross something off the bucket list by going to the Stanley Hotel, which, speaking of Stephen King, was the one that inspired The Shining, and so that was wonderful to get to see that. I've long wanted to see it, and to get to see it with other horror writers, like being there with, I think Stephen Graham Jones was there. It was crazy. It was really kind of one of those pinch me moments. So yeah, I've enjoyed that, but I've also just enjoyed the things we've gotten to talk about on the podcast. Like you've mentioned zombies. I think one of my favorite things that we've gotten to talk about on the podcast has been like all the watch throughs that we've done of the Flanagan verse. So, the Fall of the House of Usher and the Haunting of Hill House. I think we did we do Midnight Mass, or did we just talk about doing Midnight Mass?
Oh, we did Midnight
We
Mass.
did. Yeah, we did. So yeah, that to me, those kind of things were just fun. It was a joy to get to kind of really, for lack of a better word, kind of nerd out over some of that stuff, especially like the Poe one, and get to identify all the, oh yeah, we did Haunting of Bly Manor too, because we did the deep dive into Henry James and that, yeah. But yeah, just to get to look into some classic literature and see how Mike Flanagan and his team were like putting a modern spin on it and finding all the Easter eggs that were in there. that was a lot of fun. I'm hoping we get to do that again soon. But I guess he's doing Carrie, right? That I did
I,
not just make that up.
I'm not sure if he's doing Carrie right now. I know he's working on a Dark Tower uh, adaptation as well, but that might be something that's kind of further down in like the pipeline, so to speak. But hopefully he'll have another series coming out soon too, because I'm kind of jonesing for some new Mike Flanagan, to be quite
I
honest.
agree. Okay, so I'm looking it up, and IMDb tells me that Mike Flanagan is doing Carrie. It looks like it's going to be on Prime Video in 2026. And Matthew Lillard is in it.
Interesting.
I mean, a bunch of people are in it, especially people that I think you'd recognize from other things, like Raoul Coley and Ruth Codd, Kate Siegel, Samantha Sloyan. Um, I think that's how you say her last name.
And it
You know,
also looks like
they were on other, yeah.
he's written the script for the upcoming Clayface movie, which is kind of a Batman rogues gallery. That he's one of the villains, anti-heroes, I guess. So he's not directing that one, but he wrote the script for it. So
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe that is coming in our future. That would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely, and I totally agree. The watch throughs. I think we haven't ever planned it this way, but it seems like every time we do a watch through of any type, at least one of us has seen it, and at least one of us has gone in completely blind, and that's always really fun for me. The fact that we get those two perspectives, one who knows everything, or not everything, but has seen the entire thing, and somebody else who's been watching it just like episode by episode as we record. And truth be told, like I said, we have never planned it that way, but I think almost all of them have ended up that way in some shape or form. And I think that's always been a fun little side effect of doing those watch throughs.
Yeah, I agree. That is fun. Also, I can pick on Mel a little bit since she's not here, but I like when we subject her to things that is a little bit pushing the boundaries for her love of horror. Because I know she likes ghosts and hauntings and like spooky things, but sometimes, I think the gore and all that will push her over the edge. And it's been fun to know she's going to do that.
Yes.
Well, this is kind of related because it's like leaning into the fun things of the podcast, but I always like it. And I missed it this summer. I mean, I know why we took a hiatus, but um I always liked it when we do our summer series because we usually do an extended series over the summer that's a little bit more relaxed. And so we've done like Summer of Sci-Fi, and I think we did a Michael Crichton summer. Um, I loved when we did Summer of the Shark. We watched so many good and bad shark movies, and I had so much fun with that. I also liked our disaster one, but I just really loved the shark one so much that it kind of like spawned a book for me that's coming out in 2027, which is kind of cool. Um, so yeah, I really love our summer series.
Oh, 100%. I know we kind of joke that when we do the summer series that we're kind of, like you said, it's a little less formal, a little more relaxed. We're kind of letting our hair down, so to speak. But um, the summer of disasters was a lot of fun watching all those disaster movies. I totally agree about the Summer of Sharks. That's probably my favorite summer as well. Actually, one of the kids watched one of the movies with me in preparation for the podcast. It was the Sharks of the Corn, and to this day, he still quotes it at me. Like we'll quote it back and forth. There's a couple of really horrible line deliveries that we'll just like throw at each other and crack up. And also wanted to say, don't forget about the Summer of Kaiju because that was a really fun one too. Because nothing like some good old Godzilla movies and Godzilla adjacent things.
Yeah. I mean, well, speaking of kids, I think Summer of Kaiju was the one where I introduced my kids to Godzilla. Godzilla and Mothra were the 2 that they got to watch. So, um, yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun, actually. Um, and I feel like Children of the Corn, that was the one I think I made it 5 minutes into and then tapped out. It was awful.
uh, oh, it was absolutely terrible. It was absolutely terrible, and I mean, I loved every second of it. But uh, you know, my taste for horrible movies is pretty high, so uh,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I fully admit that it is an absolutely god awful, terrible movie, but it's very fun to watch.
Well, you wanna move it into some recommendations and, um, maybe kind of give people a sense of what we're reading and watching right now, and maybe even tease a little bit of what's coming in our 10th season?
Let's do it. Do you want to start off, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, I'll jump right in. Okay. I kind of have my recommendations into 3 categories, so I'm gonna start with movies that I have loved. I have been shocked that 2025 has really delivered some really good horror movies for me. Um, because they're all very different. But I was thinking I really loved Companion, which came out at the beginning of the year. That's the one it dealt with like AI and not AI. Well, yeah, I guess it was. I guess it's a robot. Um, and it's kind of I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a love story gone very, very wrong. I guess, which I enjoyed. Weapons, which came out pretty recently. That was from the writer director who did Barbarian, which I also loved, and I think Weapons and Barbarian would actually be a really good double feature. Um, and then Bring Her Back, which was an A24 horror movie, very brutal. Weapons was fun. Weapons was a fun movie to watch. Bring Her Back was not a fun movie to watch, but it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. Um, very scary, I thought. I don't know if the other 2 were as scary. They were just more, I think, fun movies to watch, but yeah, I've been really shocked that 2025 has kind of I don't know, it's brought out some pretty good movies. It's gonna be hard to pick a favorite. So yeah, that those are my first, like, I guess, kind of batch of recommendations, things that I've been loving. What about you, Matt?
Before I give my recommendation, I did want to do a quick like aside about the movie Weapons, which first of all, you're gonna gasp. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I didn't realize until it was coming out that the guy who wrote and directed it used to be part of the sketch comedy group The Whitest Kids You Know.
Yes.
And so, because
Yeah.
I was like, that name sounds really familiar. So I Googled him and I said, "Oh, that's where I know him from." So it's another just like Jordan Peele, another great
Uh-huh.
example of somebody transitioning from sketch comedy into the horror world. So um
And Matt, I want to say that I think like, I am here for it. I am here for, like, the sketch comedy horror crossovers because they are knocking it out of the park, and I've said it for a long time that I think horror and comedy are, like, 2 sides of the same coin. Just because, like, to deliver a good joke or to deliver a good scare, you have to have, like, the setup and then the kind of punchline, and, oh my god, you have to see Weapons. It's so good.
It's very high on my list. I've just been, like, have not been going to the movies very much lately, and so, I think it is out on streaming now, so I'm gonna have to watch it. So, I know I've heard nothing but good things from multiple sources who've seen it and people that I trust. So, it's on my list. I shall see it soon. Um, I guess for my first recommendation, I will actually it's going to have a little bit of a star or an asterisk behind it because I am currently still reading this book. But the book is called William, just the name William, by Mason Coyle, and it's Coile. And I actually stumbled across. I don't remember how I stumbled on the book. Um, I honestly don't remember where I discovered this, but it's a really interesting book about basically a guy who is um, agoraphobic. I was searching for the word. I was like, "What? What is the word?" He's agoraphobic. He's married. His wife is pregnant, and he has built a homemade uh, not AI not AI, but I guess a robot that's intelligent, and their marriage is kind of strained, and they invite some friends over for the evening, and he decides to introduce them to this secretive project that he's been working on named William. And I can't I can't quite put my finger on it, but the way that he writes, and especially the way that he describes things, like just the descriptions of the house or the robot itself or the characters, Coyle is really good at building tension because reading this book, I have felt like I I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. And there have been several times where the shoe has dropped, so to speak. But he does a really good job of really like kind of ratcheting up the tension slowly and then something happening. I mean, it really does feel like watching a very good, well constructed horror movie. And of course, it's playing around with things because this is, an AI artificial robot and playing around with is it actually fully intelligent, like conscious like a human or not, and things like that. But yeah, it he makes that robot pretty dang sinister, and it's one of these things where we've talked about the uncanny valley pretty frequently in this podcast, and he does a phenomenal job of describing with words the uncanny valley of looking at a robot that's not quite human. And I'm pretty impressed so far with what he's done because just reading some of the descriptions of the robot, I'm like, I can picture it perfectly and I shiver a little bit. So um he's getting a pretty big recommendation for me so far. I will report back once I completely finish the book to let you all know if he sticks the landing. But I'm about a little over 2/3 of the way through, and so far it's been really good.
That I was just looking it up while you were discussing. That sounds really fantastic. Well, I'll continue in the book category by sharing a few things that I've been reading. Uh, the first is a nonfiction book that I'm in the middle of reading right now called The Butchering Art. It's by Lindsay Fitzharris, and it's about like Joseph Lister and the beginning of germ theory and kind of how wild surgical medicine was before people started washing their hands. Um, it's really kind of fascinating because it looks at Victorian medicine, but also like the spectacle of it and how people, would go and watch. And they had these like surgical theaters. And anyway, it's a really fascinating book. It's well written, well researched. So I've had a couple of people recommend that book to me. So I grabbed it and like I get it. It's a great book. And then in the fiction world, I've kind of been living in what I'm calling the unhinged woman genre of horror. Um, Books like Mayfly, which I read that when it came out, so I read that. Gosh, it was a couple of years ago, by C.J. Lee, but also this one that I just got, Victorian Psycho, by Virginia Fido, and it's pitched as Jane Eyre meets American Psycho, but it's written in the style of like an 18th century book. It's really kind of wonderful. Um, I said 18th century, probably 19th century if I'm really getting nitpicky, but it's just fun. It's about this woman who becomes a I think she becomes a like a governess for these two kids, and she's got murder on the brain, and it's fun. So yeah, I've been enjoying that. But that's called Victorian Psycho.
Ah, unhinged women. I think there's a lot to mine in that category there. Um, so yeah, I guess my next recommendation, and I can't remember. I think I may have recommended this in the past. This is something I read a while back and was actually reminded of because I follow the author on Blue Sky, and he's always kind of interesting. But if I've already recommended this before, please don't throw rotten fruit at me. But it's worth a second recommendation because it was that good. But it's a book called The Fisherman by John Langan, and I mean it is absolutely a tale of like eldritch horror and Cthulhu-esque magic wrapped up in a story of like haunted slash traumatized family line that goes through several generations. It's a really hard book to encapsulate in just like a blurb or a brief description, but it is excellent, and especially the ending, which I mean I can't give away, obviously, but it's as someone who loves the Cthulhu mythos, even if I don't particularly like Lovecraft as a person, um, Langan really delves into that same sort of territory, but puts a very unique and original spin on it as well. And like I said, I may have recommended it in the past, but absolutely 100% worth a second recommendation. So if you haven't read The Fisherman, well worth the read.
Yes, I will second that recommendation. It's really good, like cosmic horror. Okay, well, I guess my last set of things that I've been enjoying come from the world of horror comics, which every once in a while I go through these spurts where I'm reading a lot of comics, and lately, two have really stuck out to me. One is Barstow. Um, which takes place in the town of Barstow, California, and, just this kind of, like, very nearly abandoned desert town. Like, very few people live there, and everyone who does kind of has a reason for being there, and it's all very strange and weird and odd. Um, so I've been enjoying that one. Uh, and then Matt, I know you've read this one because I told you you had to read this one. It's Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, which is it's it's pitched as I can't even say it, like, it sounds so silly, but it's wonderful. It's pitched as Dexter meets Richard Scarry, like the children's book illustrator, and it's about a cute little bear in the woods that does terrible, terrible things when nobody is looking. And listeners, when I tell you this is the book you didn't know you needed, it is the book that you didn't know you needed. I I recommended this book to so many people this summer that I'm sure people got tired of me talking about it. So, I will also just kind of tease that, we might possibly be having a new series coming on the No Fear cast about cozy horror. And this title is most likely going to come up. But yeah, I really think everybody needs this. Everybody needs a copy of this in their house. It's wonderful.
Wholeheartedly agree. 100% agree. Um, yeah. When you said Dexter meets Richard Scarry, I was like, nah. I mean, I mean, it's gotta be no. It's 100% exactly that, and it's just as awesome as it sounds. And yeah, I will wholeheartedly agree to that. I guess for my last recommendation, I'm actually delving into comics as well for this one. This is it's a graphic novel actually that I just finished about a week or two ago actually before I started reading William. It's a 2024 graphic novel by Charles Burns. He's written some other well-known pieces. I think Black Hole is probably his most well-known one. It's still kind of a indie-ish title, but that's probably his best known one. But this one is called Final Cut. And it's a really interesting story about it kind of alternates perspectives between a high I think he's in high school or maybe just out of high school kid who is I can't tell if he is on the autism spectrum or if he has or if he's just anxious or what, but there's definitely something off about him. But he and his friend are like they used to make homemade movies when they were kids, and they decide to make a homemade movie now that they're older or more grown up. And he's the one who kind of drives the plot and the art direction, and it alternates kind of between his perspective and the perspective of a girl that is friends of his friend that they bring in to be the star of the movie. And it's kind of about their it's not quite even a relationship because they never really get together, but it like their weird friendship is kind of the only way I can describe it. But it's a really good book. It's the art in it is really interesting, and like a lot of the drawings that the guy draws very reminiscent of old like 50s 60s monster movies. At one point he takes the girl to a showing, like there's an indie cinema in the town where they live and it's always showing old movies, and he takes her to a viewing of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And even like all of that infiltrates into the film and the costume design and the monster design for their movie that they're making. And it's really interesting, and it's also a really good exploration of this relationship between the two, and I use relationship in the very broad sense because they never get together romantically, but it's a sort of friendship, but also because he's kind of off-putting at times, um, that's its own minefield to navigate, I guess. But it was really good. It was one of those ones that like I finished it and was like, wow. And I kind of had to just kind of sit there for a second and just digest what I just finished. So that's that's gonna be mine. It's again, it's Final Cut with by Charles Burns.
I hadn't heard of that one before, but as you were describing it, I was like, this sounds really good. I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's absolutely worth it.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot in this episode. Or welcome back to season 10. We've kind of done our retrospective look back. It was, there was a lot to cover the past 9 seasons, but at least we hit the highlights and we've talked about some of the new things that we're into right now. Um, so yeah, I think this is a great place for us to end the episode and, tease our listeners that we've got a new series coming up. So we hope that you'll tune in for that. I'm really excited about it. We're at No Fear Cast on Twitter and Instagram, and we have a Facebook page. Our email is nofearcast@gmail.com. If you love what we're doing, consider supporting us on Patreon. We also have a merchandise available on our website, nofearcast.com. Of course, you can simply rate and review us, which is entirely free for you, but it does help other listeners find us. Theme music by Nicholas Gasparini. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode.